Welcome to Sew Very Easy. My name is Laura, and let's make bubbles. Fabric bubbles. So I found this very cute fabric with ducks and bubbles. So I think I need to make a quilt with bubbles. The body of the quilt is going to be done with the white with a big border of ducks, and this is going to be an accent color. If you get a fabric that looks good in all directions, you're going to be able to use a piece that is 30.5 inches long by the 45 inches. The inside piece is going to be 30.5 inches by 40.5 inches. So you need to cut one piece of that white. Around that white piece, we're going to put a very thin border. So you're going to cut 1.5 inches and put that border all the way around the outside of that white. And when that's all sewn together, it's only going to equal 1 inch. So you're going to have that border all the way around that big center. The next is going to be adding a big 6.5 inch border all the way around with the duck fabric. Now the duck fabric looks good in every direction, so it also saves on the fabric. So you're going to be able to sew that 6.5 inch border all the way around the quilt. The quilt top will be done at that point, except for the bubbles. And there's no piecing to this quilt other than the borders. We're going to applique bubbles onto the quilt. For the bubbles, I've just gone into my stash and pulled out colors that I like that go with the fabric. Now I need to make bubbles with these. I'm going to need a bunch of circle shapes. I have a set of 5 different circles from Creative Grid, and they have that non-slip back to them. So we're going to need a pile of different circles and different sizes. So you can use something like this, or just go in the kitchen and get a bunch of different size plates and saucers. And to make these circles really nice and round, a lightweight interfacing works great. And this is a non-fusible one. Take the lightweight interfacing and just draw all of your circles on it so that you have a pile of different sizes. You're going to be able to take that interfacing and pin it right on top of your fabric so the right side is up. And stitch following that line that you drew, and don't leave an opening. So you're going to go all the way around, and do it to all of your circles and all of your colors. Now to make those corners really easy, take your machine stitches and make them nice and small, and that will make it so much easier to turn those corners. To make it really easy, you don't have to cut any of the circle shape out until you've sewn the 2 layers together. So you have one continuous circle shape. Now you're going to be able to cut that circle shape out and leave just a very small seam allowance. If you have a pair of pinking shears, this is a great time to use it. And just cut all the way around following that line. When all the extra seam allowance has been trimmed off, you're going to be able to take the interfacing and pull it off of the fabric. So you'll have the fabric on one side, the interfacing on the other, and just cut a little hole in that interfacing. And there's no rhyme or reason, just a little hole. Then you're going to be able to take this and turn it right side out. And if you stretch that hole a little bit, that's fine. So now what you've done is you have made a perfect little circle. You can run your finger along that seam to give it a little press. So now all of that seam allowance is inside, and you have that lightweight interfacing, and you're going to leave that interfacing on. What it's going to do is it puts a little bit of an extra coating so that the fabric underneath is not going to show through as much, but it also keeps that nice perfect shape. And do that to all of your circles, and then give them a nice press. And after it's been pressed, you'll still have that hole in the back, but you can just leave it. Nothing needs to be done because it is underneath. And when you have all of your circles done, we're going to do some stitching on them. To make it look like a bubble, we need 3 different stitch lines. You're going to need a bit of a shine mark, and that's going to be the biggest mark. So just put your machine to a very large zigzag and just zigzag 1 large mark. The next is still a zigzag, but a lot smaller, and just do 2 marks along the side. It doesn't matter where you put the marks, you just need 3 marks. This is going to make it appear like a bubble. The smaller ones are just going to need a little bit of a smaller mark. The larger ones, you can go quite large. And to do that stitching line, you might need to put another interfacing along the back. I would recommend using a tearaway stabilizer. So you're going to be able to put it on and stitch your 3 marks and then tear it away. And that's going to keep that nice and flat. Now there are many different colors that you can do for the shadows depending on your fabric choices. I've stuck with the same blue, and I'm going to do the same blue throughout them all. Now you can take all of your bubbles and lay them in a pleasing arrangement on top of the quilt. You're going to be able to change all of the sizes and cover this whole quilt with these bubble arrangements. Now I have found that the shine marks that you sewed on the circle, it really doesn't matter how you place them. Some can be down, some can be up. The eye will still read them as bubbles. Put some on top of the other so that they're overlapping as you go along. Once you have the arrangement that you want, pin them down. Now you will be able to either hand stitch these down or machine stitch them, and you can stitch them with any stitch that you prefer. There is one other step that we can do to make these bubbles a little bit more, well, bubbles. And we can stuff some. As you stitch them, you're going to be able to lift up the pieces and stitch around. When you get to a certain part, you're going to be able to stuff a little bit the bubble and then continue stitching. So as you go along, you're going to be able to stuff some of those bubbles. Now you don't need to do them all. Just do a couple here and there and it will give them all dimension. I'm going to take this and I'm going to stitch it on the machine, and any stitch that you feel comfortable using, well, is the right stitch to use. I used just a very small straight stitch and went all the way around the outside. So some are stuffed and some are not. The quilt top is finished. And with those 3 simple zigzag lines throughout the bubbles, it brings those bubbles to life, and that little batting inside really adds to it. Now to quilt this, I'm just going to treat each bubble separate and quilt around it. It's going to turn it into like a trapunto. And the rest of the quilt, I'm just going to do circles throughout the quilt to keep that theme of the bubbles. It is going to be quick and easy to finish, and it's a lot of fun to make. So now we have made bubbles out of fabric. Thank you for joining me today on Sew Very Easy. Feel free to subscribe, and as always, come on back. Let's see what we're sewing next time in the sewing room. Bye for now.